Today we celebrate a dream awakening. Today we gather with renewed hope in our hearts. Today we act on an audacity of hopes and dreams for the future. Today we begin the hard work for justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. For today is a day like no other, and it is ours to shape with vision and action. Let us gather together and celebrate a dream awakening. At this time, we have an opportunity to light our candles of community. You can light a candle for a joy or a concern or simply to bring more light into our space.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreams. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, mothers of time. We are daughters of dust, sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, mothers of love, lovers of life, and builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We're mothers of courage, mothers of time. We're daughters of dust and sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and mothers of love. We're lovers of life and builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We're makers of peace and wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. From each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, the morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
Let us stand in body or spirit for the chalice lighting and our spoken affirmation. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and tolerance, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all her people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is the symbol of the spark of all that is within each of us. Let us join together in our spoken affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. Please be seated. Our opening thought comes from Mickey Kendall from her work, Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot. True equity starts with ensuring that everyone has access to the most basic of needs.
Where is our holy church, where race and class unite, as equal persons in the search for beauty, truth, and pride? Where is our holy ring, when in a human heart of sacred of truth has lit by inspiration taught? Where is our Holy One? Our mighty hosts respond. The people rise in every land to break the captive's bond. Where is our holy land within the human heart, wherever where is our paradise in aspiration's side, wherein we are free of life and nothing new.
Very happy to see that Dan did some recording of some music while he was here in Oklahoma. Our next reading comes from Naomi Klein from her work on fire, The Case for the Green New Deal. She writes, "The bottom line is this: if we get clean, we have to get fair. More than that, as we get clean, we can begin to redress the founding crimes of our nations: land theft, genocide, slavery." At this time, we'll have our time of meditation. Our meditation comes from Elizabeth Buki Saunter, "A World of Beauty and Love is Coming." Let's breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. In and out. Spirit of life, love which holds us, we gather in reverence and thanks for you. We are grateful for the gift of another breath and for each moment of connection, beauty, and truth. Cry with us in our pain for our world. Remind us that we are loved just as we are. Remind us that we are connected with all that is. Remind us that we do not journey alone. Give us what we need for today. Call us back to our promises, commitments, and values. Help us love ourselves and each other, and to show that love in our actions. Make us instruments of justice, equity, and compassion. Free us from all that is evil. We declare that life and love are stronger than tyranny and fear, that a world of beauty and love is coming, and we must shape it together. May it be so.
Make channels for the streams of love where they may broadly run, and love has overflowing streams to fill them everyone. But if at any time we see such channels to provide, the very founts of love for us will soon be parched and dried. For we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
Our next reading comes from Dolly Chug, The Person You Mean to Be, How Good People Fight Bias. Equality says we treat everyone the same, regardless of headwinds or tailwinds. Equity says we give people what they need to have the same access and opportunities as others, taking into account the headwinds they face, which may mean differential treatment for some groups. The discourse this morning is on the second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And we'll be looking at the question, what do we mean by justice and equity, and how are they related to our expression of compassion within community? In beginning my reflections, I'd like to read from Emily Gage, who's from the Unity Temple in Chicago, and she writes these words reflecting on the second principle. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations points us towards something beyond inherent worth and dignity. It points us to the larger community. It gets at collective responsibility. It reminds us that treating people as human beings is not simply something we do one-on-one, but something that has systemic implications and can inform our entire cultural way of being. Compassion is something that we can easily act on individually. We can demonstrate openness, give people respect, and treat people with kindness on our own. But we need one another to achieve equity and justice. Justice, equity, and compassion are all part of the same package. Just as the second principle overlaps with the first, so it is related to the seventh principle, the interdependent web of all existence. If you'd like to read more of what Emily Gage has written about the second principle, you can look at the 7 Principles in Word and Worship, edited by Ellen Brandenburg. I like to discuss what I've always found to be a helpful illustration. It's an actual illustration to understand the difference between equality and equity. So think in your mind's eye of this illustration. There's 3 persons who are standing behind a fence, and on the other side of the fence is a baseball game that's being played. Perhaps you've seen this image before, right? And so these 3 persons who are behind the fence are not of the same height. They're not of the same stature. One of them is quite tall, kind of like myself. One of them is medium height, and one is very, very short. And there's a fence that for the tall person, when the tall person is standing on a box, the fence comes to about here. So the tall person standing on the box has a great view of the baseball game. And all 3 of these persons are standing on one box. The box is the same height, though. So the second person who's standing on the box is about right here. A little bit like Kilroy with the nose over the fence, right? Kilroy was here, remember that? So that's where the second person is. Not as good of a view, kind of has to, look over a little bit to be able to see what's going on. Not quite as good as the other person who's standing up tall on the box. And then the third person's on the box, and they're here. No view at all of the baseball game. They're being treated equally. They're all given the same box, but it's not equity. Equity would look something like this. The tall person doesn't need a box. The tall person could see quite well without the box. The medium person wasn't great with the box, but needed at least one box to be able to see. So the medium person still gets to see with one box. And then the really short person gets the box of the really tall person, standing on 2 boxes, and is able to see the baseball game just as well as the other 2. The difference between equality and equity. So recognizing the equality of persons is not enough. Simply recognizing the equality of persons and treating people equally is not enough to create justice and equity. Thomas Jefferson, who I'm told never joined a Unitarian church, but attended a Unitarian church in Philadelphia, states that, quote, all men are created equal, even though he really did not mean it, given the fact that he enslaved other persons. But if Jefferson had included women and persons of color in his Declaration on Equality, that also would not ensure the cultivation of justice and equity within society. Just focusing on and recognizing the equality of people is not enough. Focusing on equality of opportunity is also not quite enough to create justice and equity for all persons. Though Harvard philosopher John Rawls makes an important and I think valid point that equality of opportunity is a necessary condition for justice, equality of opportunity will never be a reality unless we also recognize and transform the unjust systems that perpetuate much more opportunity for the powerful few over the many, and that gives so many people a massive head start because of injustices that have been perpetuated for generations. So equality of opportunity is not enough as well. True justice requires equity, and cultivating equity means going beyond a transformation of just our individual behavior towards one another. It requires the transformation of unjust and inequitable systems that perpetuate the privilege that some people have over other persons within our society. It requires repairing the breach of injustice experienced by so many persons over so many generations that has kept true justice and equity out of reach, especially for the most vulnerable in our society, whose backs have been against the wall of injustice for so long. True justice requires not only a leveling of the playing field. Have you ever played on a field that wasn't level? I used to play soccer, and we were on one of our soccer fields, the pitch, as they call it in England, it was uneven. And when you were on one end, the much greater chance of them scoring goals on you than when you were on the other end. So it is important to have an even playing field, but we also have to realize that some people will require more help, preparation, and assistance even to get on the playing field in the first place. Sadly, our inability to make justice a reality in our society, much less equity in our society, I think stems from two very simple yet insidious reasons. I think these are the two primary reasons we have been unable up to this point to make justice a reality in our society. And they are these: clinging to white supremacy and clinging to patriarchy. Tragically, much of what passes as Christianity, the tradition that I'm a member of, much of what passes as Christianity in the United States has become a quasi-religious facade for the perpetuation of patriarchy and white supremacy. The oft-repeated claim that the United States is a, quote, Christian nation, end quote, is rooted in a Eurocentric Western chauvinism grounded in an adherence to both patriarchy and white supremacy. It is not an accident that such a claim is made most vociferously in the South, even though it is not limited to one region of the country. It is no accident that the most patriarchal religions are the least accepting of persons of different sexual orientations or gender identities, protecting the power and position of a clearly defined maleness is a patriarchal priority, as is keeping women from being elevated to the highest positions within religious hierarchy, including the pulpit. The protection and the perpetuation of patriarchy are key factors behind the ongoing efforts to control women, to control their bodies, and their reproductive health choices. And adherence to both patriarchy and white supremacy are driving the attacks against systemic efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within our society. You probably already know, some of you are from Oklahoma, that the governor of Oklahoma announced this week that all funding will be removed for DEI offices and programs. DEI's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and offices at all public universities and colleges in the state of Oklahoma. No more funding for any of those programs or offices. You probably also know that our state superintendent in Oklahoma has made eliminating DEI programs a primary focus of his work as state superintendent of public instruction. And it's not surprising that both the Oklahoma governor and the Oklahoma state superintendent come from extremely patriarchal religious traditions. Now, in the midst of these many attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we must remain vigilant to continue working and striving for justice and equity. And as the second principle reminds us, our work for justice and equity is an expression of compassion. An expression of compassion that is grounded in deep and powerful love for one another. Compassion grounded in love is the motivation that drives the movement towards justice and equity. And the justice we seek is broad, and it's comprehensive, and it's for all persons and for all life. It includes social justice, economic justice, and environmental justice. It is justice for all persons and for all life, and the ultimate goal of our work for justice, equity, and inclusion is the creation of the beloved community. A phrase that one of my favorite thinkers, Martin Luther King Jr., used quite a bit. But the only way to get to beloved community is by breaking patriarchy and by breaking white supremacy. May we make it so. At this time, you have an opportunity to give either at the table, and there's also opportunities to give online.
Peace has tried us, hope inside us, we'll lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, we'll lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Before we stand in body or spirit for the parting thought and the extinguishing of the chalice, I wanted to read to you what I thought was a good demonstration and expression of the second principle from the president of my university and our vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. They wrote this to our campus community a couple days ago. OCU community, on Tuesday, Governor Kevin Stitt signed an executive order requiring executive state agencies, including institutions within the Oklahoma State system of higher education, to discontinue programming, education, and hiring related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oklahoma City University, as a private university, is committed to continuing the important work of creating and sustaining a climate and culture where belonging, equity, inclusion, and diversity are at the forefront. Each member of our community contributes to who we are as a university. We all bring a range of rich, unique, and diverse lived experiences to OCU. We are a special place because of you. And we look forward to continuing to work diligently to be a place where all belong. Sincerely, Kenneth R. Evans, President, and Talia Carroll, Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Let's stand in body or spirit for a parting thought and the extinguishing of the chalice. Our parting thought comes from Elena Aguilar, Coaching for Equity, Conversations That Change Practice. Remember, it's not your fault that things are the way they are, but it is your responsibility to do something about them. Let us join in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.